Have you ever judged someone only to have your perspective completely shattered in an instant? That's exactly what happened to Melissa Carter when she crossed paths with single father James Wilson and his remarkable 6-year-old daughter Emma at their local grocery store. What began as a moment of cruel judgment ended in tears, transformation, and a friendship that would change both their lives forever. Stay with me until the end for a twist that will leave you speechless, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that remind us of the power of compassion and understanding. James Wilson clutched his daughter Emma's small hand as they navigated the crowded grocery store on a Friday evening. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, highlighting the dark circles under his eyes. At 34, James looked closer to 45, his shoulders permanently hunched from the weight of single parenthood, his clothes slightly rumpled despite his best efforts. "Daddy, can we get the dinosaur cereal?" Emma asked, her voice bright with hope as she pointed to the colorful box on the top shelf. James checked his phone calculator, adding up the items already in their cart. "Not today, sweetheart. We need to stick to our list this time." He hated saying no to her, but the past-due electric bill sitting on their kitchen counter left little room for extras. Emma's face fell for just a moment before she nodded with understanding far beyond her 6 years. "That's okay. The oatmeal you make is better anyway." Behind them, a well-dressed woman with perfectly highlighted hair and manicured nails pushed her cart around them with an exaggerated sigh. Melissa Carter, regional manager at a luxury real estate firm, was running late for her dinner reservation and found herself stuck behind what she perceived as yet another incompetent parent blocking the aisle. "Some people really shouldn't be allowed in public without basic shopping skills," she muttered, loud enough for James to hear as she passed. James flinched but said nothing, too accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered comments. Single dads weren't as common as single moms, and his disheveled appearance often invited judgment. He'd learned to let it roll off his back, most days, anyway. But Emma hadn't missed the comment. Her small face scrunched up in confusion as she watched the woman stride confidently down the aisle. "Daddy, why was that lady being mean?" she asked, her voice carrying in the quiet aisle. James knelt down, meeting his daughter's eyes. "Some people are just in a hurry, Em. It's not about us." Emma considered this, her eyes serious behind her slightly too large glasses, frames they'd found at a second-hand store that she'd fallen in love with because they were just like Daddy's. "But you always say we should be kind even when we're having a bad day," she replied. James smiled, his heart swelling with pride despite his exhaustion. "That's right, sweetheart. That's exactly right." 3 aisles over, Melissa was tossing overpriced organic produce into her cart, still irritated by the delay. She'd had a hellish week closing a difficult property sale, and her patience was non-existent. The image of the scruffy man and his daughter lingered in her mind, triggering an uncomfortable feeling she quickly dismissed as she checked her watch again. At the checkout, fate intervened. Melissa found herself directly behind James and Emma in the only open lane. She suppressed another sigh as she watched James carefully counting out crumpled bills from a worn wallet. "I'm sorry," he said to the cashier, his voice low with embarrassment. "I need to put the cheese back. We're a bit over budget." The cashier nodded sympathetically, used to such scenarios in this mixed-income neighborhood. As she removed the block of cheddar, Emma looked up at her father with concern. "But Daddy, that's for your sandwiches for work." James stroked her hair. "It's okay. The peanut butter ones are good too." Melissa felt that uncomfortable feeling again, stronger this time. She watched as James bagged their groceries himself, meticulously organizing them while Emma helped, standing on her tiptoes to reach into the cart. When they finished, Emma turned and caught Melissa staring. Instead of looking away, the little girl smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "I like your necklace," Emma said, pointing to the delicate pendant at Melissa's throat. "It looks like stars." Caught off guard, Melissa touched the constellation pendant, a gift from her grandmother years ago. "Thank you," she replied automatically. "Emma, let's go," James said gently, clearly wanting to remove them from the woman who'd been rude earlier. But Emma wasn't finished. "My daddy says stars remind us that even when things seem dark, there's always light if you look for it." James blushed, tugging gently on his daughter's hand. "Sorry to hold you up again," he murmured to Melissa, not meeting her eyes. As they turned to leave, Emma looked back over her shoulder. "I hope you find some light today, Star Lady." The cashier chuckled as she began scanning Melissa's items. "That's one special kid," she commented. Melissa nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of her earlier behavior. She watched through the store window as James helped Emma into an ancient sedan with mismatched doors, carefully buckling her seatbelt before loading their few bags. "Wait," Melissa said suddenly, pulling out her credit card. "And that cheese they put back, add it to my bill." The cashier raised an eyebrow but complied. Melissa grabbed her bags and the cheese, hurrying out to the parking lot just as James was closing his trunk. "Excuse me," she called out, slightly breathless as she approached. James turned, wariness evident in his stance as he instinctively moved closer to Emma. "You forgot this," Melissa said, holding out the cheese. James frowned. "No, we couldn't afford it." "Please," Melissa said, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. "I'd like you to have it." Emma peered around her father's legs. "See, Daddy? The Star Lady is nice after all." James hesitated, pride warring with practicality. "That's very kind, but—" "I was rude earlier," Melissa interrupted, the admission difficult but necessary. "I'm sorry." Something in her expression must have convinced him because James slowly accepted the cheese. "Thank you," he said simply. Melissa nodded, turning to leave when Emma's voice stopped her. "Do you want to see my drawing? I got a gold star on it today." Before James could intervene, Emma had pulled a slightly crumpled paper from her small backpack. Melissa found herself looking at a crayon drawing of a man and a little girl holding hands beneath a sky full of colorful stars. "That's me and Daddy," Emma explained proudly. "Ms. Johnson said I'm getting really good at perspective, whatever that means." Melissa smiled, genuinely this time. "It's beautiful." "Emma, we need to let the lady go," James said gently. "She probably has plans." Melissa checked her watch. Her reservation had passed. Strangely, she found she didn't care. "Actually, I was just going to grab some dinner." Emma's eyes lit up. "We're having spaghetti. Daddy makes the best spaghetti in the whole world." James looked mortified. "Emma, we can't invite strangers to dinner." "But she's not a stranger anymore," Emma reasoned. "She's the Star Lady who gave us cheese." Melissa surprised herself by laughing, a real laugh, not the polished social one she used at work functions. "I'm Melissa," she offered. "I'm Emma Wilson, and this is my daddy, James Wilson. See? Now we're all friends." James ran a hand through his hair, clearly flustered. "I'm sorry about this." "She's very wonderful," Melissa finished for him. "She's wonderful." The sincerity in her voice seemed to catch James off guard. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Melissa saw past the rumpled clothes and tired eyes to the kind, devoted father beneath. "Our spaghetti is nothing fancy," he warned. Melissa thought about her empty apartment, the takeout containers in her fridge, the reservation at an overpriced restaurant where she would have dined alone while answering work emails. "I love spaghetti," she said. That impromptu dinner changed everything. Over simple pasta and garlic bread, Melissa learned that James was a high school science teacher who'd been raising Emma alone since his wife died of complications during childbirth. He'd moved to a smaller apartment in a less desirable neighborhood to be closer to his elderly mother, who helped with childcare when she could. "Grandma's hands shake a lot now," Emma explained as she twirled spaghetti around her fork with careful concentration. "But she still tells the best stories." James spoke little about himself, instead drawing out Melissa's story, her climb up the corporate ladder, the recent promotion that consumed her life, her estrangement from family who didn't understand her ambition. "Do you like selling houses?" Emma asked, her directness catching Melissa off guard again. "I'm good at it," Melissa answered automatically. Emma tilted her head. "But do you like it?" The question lingered in Melissa's mind long after she'd said goodbye to the Wilsons that evening. She found herself thinking about them over the following days, about James's quiet dignity despite his circumstances, about Emma's extraordinary empathy and wisdom. A week later, Melissa found herself back at the same grocery store, hovering near the entrance at the time she'd seen them before. When the familiar mismatched sedan pulled into the lot, her heart leapt with unexpected joy. Emma spotted her immediately. "Star Lady," she called, waving enthusiastically. And just like that, Melissa became a regular part of their lives. Friday night spaghetti dinners became a tradition. She found herself helping Emma with art projects, accompanying them to the free concerts in the park, even attending Emma's school play where she played a very enthusiastic tree. James was more reserved, careful to maintain boundaries, but over time, his walls began to crumble. One evening, after Emma had fallen asleep on the couch during movie night, he finally opened up about his struggles. "Some days I'm terrified I'm failing her," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Her mother would have known exactly what to do, how to make everything perfect for her. Melissa reached for his hand without thinking. "James, that little girl adores you. You're not just surviving as her father, you're thriving. She's kind, intelligent, and has more emotional intelligence than most adults I know. Including you when we first met," he teased gently, the first real joke he'd made at her expense. Melissa laughed. "Especially me." 3 months after their grocery store encounter, Melissa found herself facing a crisis at work. A major client was threatening to pull out of a deal unless she could find them a property that met their impossible specifications within a week. "I can't do family dinner this Friday," she told James over the phone, surprised by how much the cancellation bothered her. "This client could make or break my year." "We understand," James assured her. "Work comes first." But did it? The question nagged at her as she drove from property to property, none of them quite right for her demanding clients. On Thursday night, exhausted and discouraged, she found herself driving to James's apartment instead of her own. Emma answered the door in pajamas decorated with planets and stars. "Melissa. Daddy said you couldn't come tomorrow, but you're here today instead." James appeared behind his daughter, surprise evident on his face. "Everything okay?" Melissa shook her head, feeling tears threatening for the first time in years. "Not really. Can I come in?" Over hot chocolate, for Emma, and coffee, for the adults, Melissa explained her predicament. James listened attentively while Emma drew quietly at the kitchen table. "What if you showed them something completely different?" James suggested. "Something they haven't considered but might actually work better for their needs?" Melissa blinked. "That's actually brilliant." "Daddy's super smart," Emma chimed in without looking up from her drawing. "He always finds another way to solve problems." The next morning, Melissa took James's advice. Instead of showing her clients more of the same luxury properties they'd rejected, she took them to a historic building on the edge of the Arts District, a former factory with soaring ceilings and character her corporate clients had claimed to despise. "I know this isn't what you asked for," she said as they walked through the space, "but sometimes what we need isn't what we think we want." To her amazement, they loved it. The deal closed that afternoon, the largest commission of her career secured. Her boss was ecstatic, immediately talking about the next big client, the next challenge, the potential promotion to the national team. Melissa nodded and smiled, but her mind was elsewhere, on a small apartment across town where spaghetti night would soon begin without her. Actually, she heard herself saying, "I need to leave early today. I have an important dinner to attend." She arrived at James's apartment with a bottle of sparkling cider, a block of the fancy cheese that had started it all, and a box containing a dinosaur-shaped cake. Emma's squeal of delight when she opened the door was worth more than any commission. "You came. And you brought a dinosaur." James stood in the kitchen doorway, a dish towel over his shoulder and a look of pleasant surprise on his face. "I thought your big client closed the deal this afternoon," Melissa finished. "Thanks to your advice." Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Melissa and James sat on his small balcony, looking at the few stars visible through the city lights. "Something changed for me today," Melissa admitted. "When the deal closed, all I could think about was getting here, not about the commission or the promotion." James was quiet for a moment. "We've enjoyed having you in our lives these past few months," he said carefully. "Emma adores you." "Just Emma?" Melissa asked, surprising herself with her boldness. James turned to face her, his expression serious. "Melissa, I'm a package deal with a lot of baggage. I work long hours for not enough pay. I live in this tiny apartment. I can't offer." "Stop," Melissa interrupted. "Before I met you and Emma, I had everything society tells us we should want: money, success, independence. But I was miserable without even realizing it." She reached for his hand. "You've shown me what really matters. Both of you have." "And what's that?" James asked, his voice barely audible. "Connection. Purpose. Putting someone else's needs before your own." She smiled. "Emma taught me that first day when she was worried about your sandwich cheese, not her dinosaur cereal." James laughed softly. "She notices everything." "She's extraordinary," Melissa agreed. "Like her father." The kiss that followed wasn't earth-shattering or dramatic. It was gentle, tentative, and perfect, like the first star appearing in the evening sky. 6 months later, Melissa found herself back in the same grocery store, this time pushing the cart while Emma debated the merits of different pasta shapes for their Friday dinner. James was at a parent-teacher conference, leaving the girls to handle the shopping. "Bow ties are more fun, but spaghetti is traditional," Emma was explaining seriously. "This is an important decision." Melissa smiled, still amazed at how this precocious child had changed her life. She'd scaled back her hours at work, referring some clients to colleagues to have more time with James and Emma. Her boss hadn't understood, but for the first time in her adult life, Melissa didn't care about climbing the corporate ladder. "Why not get both?" she suggested. "We can have a pasta taste test." Emma's eyes lit up. "That's genius. And we need extra cheese." As they turned the corner, Melissa nearly collided with another shopper, a harried-looking woman in a business suit, frantically checking her watch. "Watch where you're going," the woman snapped, barely looking at them as she pushed past. Melissa recognized herself in the woman's impatience, in the stress lines around her mouth, in the way she moved through the world as if everyone else was an obstacle. Emma tugged on her hand. "That lady seems like she's having a really bad day." "I think you're right," Melissa agreed. Emma considered this, then reached for a small package of cookies from their cart, the special ones with sprinkles she'd been allowed to choose as a treat. "Can we give her these? Maybe it will help her find her light." Melissa felt her heart swell with love for this remarkable child. "That's a beautiful idea." They caught up with the woman at the end of the aisle. Emma stepped forward bravely, holding out the cookies. "Excuse me, Star Lady," she said, using the nickname that had once belonged to Melissa. "These are for you. Everyone needs cookies on hard days." The woman stopped, clearly startled. She looked from Emma to the cookies to Melissa, confusion evident on her face. "We don't know each other," she said hesitantly. "That's okay," Emma replied with the simple wisdom that had changed Melissa's life. "We're all just